For question number 1, we are looking at what we call a proportion. A proportion is two ratios that are set equal to each other. The way that we solve proportions is by cross multiplying. So what would I multiply 3 by? I would multiply 3 times 50. Now, I'm going to start with 3 times 5. 3 times 5 gives me 15. And then I'm going to tack on this little 0 that I have here at the end. And that gives me 150. And I can do that when I have numbers that end in 0. I can do what I just did right there. Oh, give me just a second. Okay. So I have 150. Now I drop down that equal sign. So 150 equals. Now what would I multiply 10 by? I would multiply 10 times x. And 10 times x just gives me 10 x's. Now I ask myself, okay, looking at my x, what operation is happening to x? 10 is being multiplied times x. Well, what's the opposite of multiplication? The opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide on both sides, which means I'm going to put a fraction bar there. Then I would divide by 10. Now what happens when we divide by 10 and it ends, both numbers end in a 0, all I have to do is cross them off. I'm left with 15 divided by 1, and 15 divided by 1 gives me 15. So x equals 15. We're going to do the same thing over here. So when I see a proportion, I cross multiply. So what am I going to multiply 12 by? I multiply 12 times x, and 12 times x gives me 12 x's. Then what would I multiply 18 by? I would do 18 times 8. Now I don't know 18 times 8 off the top of my head, so I'm going to actually write 18 times 8. I start with 8 times 8. Now 8 times 8 gives me 64. So I'm going to write down a 4, and I'll carry my 6 over here. Now I'll do 1 times 8. 1 times 8 gives me 8, and then I still have this 6 up here, so I'll do 8 plus 6, which gives me 14. It's going to give me 144. Now I ask myself, what operation is happening between 12 and x? Well, between 12 and x, we have multiplication. And how do I get rid of multiplication? We divide on both sides, which means I'm going to put that fraction bar. I'm going to divide both sides by 12. And then one of our multiplication facts is 144 divided by 12. And that's going to give me 12. This one says the Venn diagram below shows the relationships among different sets of numbers and to complete the diagram. So we have rational numbers, integers, and whole numbers. This is really similar to what we did in 6th grade. So I'm going to look at each of my numbers and I'm going to classify them. So 6.5, how would you classify this? Because 6.5 has a decimal, the only thing that's allowed to have a decimal is irrational numbers. All the other ones say no decimals in their definitions. So the only one that's allowed to have a decimal is a rational number, so this would be 6.5. The next one is 45. Now, normally I would classify 45 as a natural number because it is a positive number with no decimals or fractions. Now, because that is not on this diagram, I'm going to classify it as a whole number because it's the next best thing. Then we have -6. Now, -6, how would you classify it? -6 is going to be an integer because it is a negative number with no decimals or fractions. And then last but not least, we have -2.5. And how would we classify -2.5? -2.5 would be a rational number because it is the only thing that allows for decimals. The next one says, Irving earns $10.50 for each hour he tutors. How much will he earn for 8.5 hours of tutoring? So let's say, I'm going to draw a picture here. We have hour 1, hour 2, hour 3, hour 4, hour 5, hour 6, hour 7, hour 8. And I'll talk about the half hour in just a second, but we know that he's tutoring for 8 hours. Well, every single hour he's earning $10.50. So every single hour for hours 1 through 8, he is earning $10.50. Well, I could go through and I could add $10.50 8 times. Or what is the same thing as repeated addition? Multiplying. So I'm going to multiply $10.50 times 8.5. So we have 10.50 times 8.5. We're going to start with 0 times 5. 0 times 5 is 0. Then we'll do 5 times 5. 5 times 5 gives me 25, so I'm going to write down my 5 and carry my 2. Then I have 0 times 5. 0 times 5 is 0, and then plus 2 gives me 2. Then I have 1 times 5, and 1 times 5 gives me 5. I move on to my next row now. Because I am in the next row, I'm going to add a 0. Then I have 8 times 0. 8 times 0 gives me 0. Then I have 5 times 8, and 5 times 8 is 40, so I'm going to write down a 0 and carry my 4. Then I'll do 0 times 8. 0 times 8 is 0, and then I'll add my 4, so that gives me 4. Then I have 8 times 1, and 8 times 1 gives me 8. Now that I'm done with all of my numbers, I'm going to add them together. So 0 plus 0 is 0, 5 plus 0 is 5, 2 plus 0 is 2, 5 plus 4 is 9, and then 8 plus 0 is 8. How many decimal places would I have? I would have a total of 3 decimal places. It is because I have 1, 2, 3 numbers behind a decimal. 1, 2, 3. So here I will have 1, 2, 3 numbers behind a decimal, and that will give me 89.25. This one says to place the numbers in the correct place in the graphic organizer. So we have rational, integer, and whole numbers. So how would you classify 4 right here? Usually I would classify 4 as a natural number. Since natural numbers are not on this diagram, I'm going to classify it as a whole number. How would you classify -3? -3 is a whole number with a negative inside in the front of it, so that's going to be classified as an integer. It's a negative number with no decimals or fractions. How would you classify 7.5? Remember, only rational numbers can have decimals, so we're going to classify that as irrational. How would you classify -1.5? Remember, only rational numbers can have decimals, so we'll classify that as a rational number. This says, what are integers? All you're going to do is just copy down this definition that I gave you right here for the definition of an integer. There you go. So that's what the definition you should be. All right, this one says, the Venn diagram below shows the relationships among different sets of numbers. Which numbers shown belong in the shaded part of the diagram? So I have to look at the shaded part of the diagram. And what does my shaded part of my diagram ask for? The shaded part of my diagram asks for integers. So I know that I am looking for integers. Well, we just defined integers as all positive, negative, and 0 numbers with no decimals or fractions. So look, is -2.3 an integer? No, it has a decimal. Is -14 an integer? Yes, it is either a positive or a negative number with no decimals or fractions. Is 0 an integer? Yes, it also includes 0 in the definition. Is -6? That's actually not true. 0 would go in whole numbers. Sorry. More specifically, 0 would go in the whole numbers, not just in integers. 0 is an integer, but it would go in the whole number spot. Okay, and then -7, is that an integer? -7 is an integer. It is a negative number with no fractions or decimals. Is 2/3 an integer? No, it has a fraction. All right. A family of 5 paid a total of $112.50 for tickets to a music festival. Each ticket was the same price. What was the price of each ticket to the music festival? So I'm going to draw a picture real fast. Each one of these tickets, I drew 5 tickets, cost the same amount of money. We just don't know how much money it was. We do know that for all of these tickets, they paid a total of $112.50. And we know that all of the tickets cost the same cost. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to split that cost among my 5 tickets. When I split something up, splitting means I am dividing. So I'm going to take 112.50 and I am going to divide by 5. Now, 5, first we check with 1. 5 is bigger than 1, so it can't go into that. how many times does 5 go into 11? 5 goes into 11 2 times. Now, we do divide, multiply, subtract, bring down. So we just divided. We said 11 divided by 5 gives us 2. The next step is to multiply. So we're going to do 2 times 5. 2 times 5 gives us 10. My next step is to now subtract. So I'll do 11 minus 10, and that gives me 1. The next step is to bring down. So I'm going to bring down my 2. And now I go all the way back up, and I divide. So 5 goes into 12 2 times again. Now I multiply. We have 2 times 5. 2 times 5 gives me 10. Now I subtract. 12 minus 10 gives me 2. Now I bring down, and we say, okay, how many times? Oh, wait, we brought down. Now we go back up to divide, and we say 25 divided by 5. 25 divided by 5 gives us 5. 5 times 5 is 25. We multiplied. Now we subtract. That equals 0, and we bring down. That's our last number, and since for 0, so now we say how many times does 5 go into 0, and that would be 0 times, and since we ended with the 0, we're good to go. We bring our decimal straight up, and our final answer is $22.50. All right, this one says to find the value of the expression. So the first thing I'm going to look at is 2.35 is positive or negative. It is positive. And then 8.1 right here is positive or negative. This is a negative because a subtraction symbol is a negative sign. Okay, so are these same signs or different signs? These are different signs. Different signs add or subtract. Different signs are going to subtract. So I put the bigger number on top. 8.1 is my bigger number, so I'm going to put it on top. 8.1. Now, when I add or subtract, what do I always have to make sure I do with my decimals? Line them up. So I'm going to plop another decimal right there, and it's going to be 2.35. Remember, we said we're subtracting, so here we go. I am missing a placeholder right here, so I'm going to add a 0 right there. Now that 0, we can't do 0 minus 5. So that 0 right there is going to turn into a 10. Now I just borrowed from the 1, so that 1 is going to turn into a 0. 10 minus 5 is 5. I can't do 0 minus 3. So that 0 is going to turn into a 10. And then I borrowed from the 8, so that'll turn into a 7. We'll do 10 minus 3, and that gives us 7. And then we have 7 minus 2, which gives us 5. Now, how do I know what sign it is? We always keep the sign of the bigger number. So, which one is bigger? 2 or 8? 8 is bigger, and since my 8 is negative, this is going to be a negative 5.75. Same thing with this one. We have 34.87, which is positive. And then we have negative 12.25, which is, negative. Same signs or different signs? Different signs. Different signs add or subtract. They subtract. So I always put my bigger number on top, so which one's bigger, 34 or 12? 34 is bigger, so I'll have 34.87. What do I always have to make sure I do when I'm adding or subtracting? I have to line up my decimals. So I'm going to plop another decimal right there, and I have 12.25. We'll subtract now. Okay, so we have 7 minus 5. 7 minus 5 gives me 2. And then I have 8 minus 2, and 8 minus 2 gives me 6. I'm going to plop that decimal down. And then I have 4 minus 2. 4 minus 2 gives me 2. And then I have 3 minus 1, and 3 minus 1 gives me 2. Oops, 2. Okay, now I have to ask myself, okay, I always keep the sign of the bigger number, so which one of these is bigger, my positive or my negative? The positive is bigger, so this is going to be a positive 22.62. All right, this one says, John went to dinner and ordered a hamburger for $7.99, French fries for $2.99, and a drink for $1.95. He was charged $1.32 in sales tax. If he paid with a $20 bill, how much change will he receive? So step one is to figure out how much he spent. We know that he bought a hamburger for $7.99. He bought French fries for $2.99, and he bought a drink for $1.95. But that's not all. He was also charged sales tax. Now, sales tax adds to our total, okay? They are increasing the cost of how much something is when they tax it. So we also have to include the tax when we figure out how much he spent. So I'm going to do 7.99 plus 2.99 plus 1.95 plus 1.32. I'm going to add this all at once. You don't always have to add it all at once. This used to make me uncomfortable when I was in junior high and my teachers had me add all of this stuff at once. If it makes you uncomfortable, you don't have to add it all at once, okay? So just take that with a grain of salt. All right, I'm going to go through this really slowly. We're going to start with 9 plus 9. 9 plus 9 gives me 18. And then we'll do 18 plus 5. 18 plus 5 gives me 23. 18 plus 5 gives me 23. And then I'll add 23 plus 2, and 23 plus 2 gives me 25. So I'm going to write down a 5, and I'm going to carry my 2. Then we're going to have 2 plus 9. 2 plus 9 gives me 11. Then I'm going to do 11 plus 9. 11 plus 9 gives me 20. Then I'm going to do 20 plus 9. 20 plus 9 gives me 29. Then I'm going to do 29 plus 3. 29 plus 3 gives me 32. So I'm going to write down a 2 and carry my 3. All right, now I'm going to start with 3 plus 7. 3 plus 7 gives me 10. Then I'll do 10 plus 2, and 10 plus 2 gives me 12. Then I'll do 12 plus 1, and 12 plus 1 gives me 13. And I'll do 13 plus 1, which gives me 14. So he spent $14.25. Now, he paid with a $20 bill. I notice that my $14.25 has a decimal, but my 20 does not. So I'm going to add a decimal right there. And change always means that we do what? Subtract. So I'm going to take 20, don't forget my decimal, and I'm going to subtract. Now, when we add or subtract, we always have to do what? Line up our decimals. So this will be 20 with 2 decimals, and then 14.25. We are subtracting. This 0 right here will turn into a 10. This 0 will turn into a 9, and this 0 will turn into a 9, and then this 2 will turn into a 1. 10 minus 5 gives us 5. 9 minus 2 gives us 7. Drop down that decimal. 9 minus 4 gives us 5. And then 1 minus 1 gives us 0. So his change that he received was $5.75. Last question. Kat has 4/5 foot of a ribbon. She is going to use half of that ribbon to make a hair bow. How many feet of ribbon should Kai use to make the hair bow? Now, she is using half of the ribbon. We usually miss this key operation word right here, which is of. Of always, 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 always means that we are going to multiply. So we are going to multiply 4/5 times 1/2. When we multiply, we do tops times tops, and we do bottoms times bottoms. So I'm going to start with 4 times 1. 4 times 1 gives me 4, and then 5 times 2 gives me 10. Now, I can actually divide both 4 and 10 by 2, which means I'm going to simplify this. I'm going to do 4 divided by 2, and I'm going to do 10 divided by 2. 4 divided by 2 gives me 2, and 10 divided by 2 gives me 5. So that gives me 2/5 right there.